Howdy, lads and lassies. Have you ever thought, man, if I took a 1940s projector and ran my guitar through it, what would that sound like? Probably not. But Walrus Audio has the answer for you in the 385 Overdrive. This might sound ridiculous to run a guitar through a projector, but back in the day, the projectors had a amplifier in them to amplify the sound, and those amplifiers happened to be tube amps. And so when guitar players needed something, sometimes they stole a projector. And these projector amps have been used by lots of people. My personal favorite application of the projector amp in recent music history was Marcus Mumford on the Wilder Mind album and tour. He was rocking the projector amp, at least one of them, in his backline, and running his Jazz Masters through it. And I thought that it sounded really good in the live videos. I don't know how much of that what I was hearing versus like the super reverb and the other amps he was running, but he definitely was using at least one of them. What does this pedal do? Like I said, it's mimicking the sound of kind of those projector amplifiers. So they have a 6v6 power section, and they're roughly around 15 watts. So it's kind of Fender Princeton like. And I actually happen to really like amps that are around 15 watts and have two 6v6s in them. So I was intrigued by this pedal, and I'd been trying out things like the Super Bolt and the JJS Twin 12. And so I wanted to, try another pedal. And so I grabbed the Walrus 385, and I've ended up keeping it for many, many years because of its versatility and its great sound. And I'll kind of walk through some of that stuff. But first, an overview of the controls. On the face of the pedal, we have the true bypass on-off switch. We have a very bright blue LED. We have controls for volume, gain, bass, and treble. And then on the top of the pedal, we simply have one jack, and that's for a center negative 9-volt power supply. I don't think you can run any other voltages through it, so just stick with 9 volts. Check Walrus's website to be sure. And then on the sides, we have the side-mounted jacks for the 1/4-inch input and 1/4-inch. This is 1/4-inch input and 1/4-inch output. So it's just a normal compact size pedal. So here's a Boss pedal for reference. I think most people have seen Walrus Audio pedals, and when you include the thumb screw for the Boss pedal, it's a little bit shorter in terms of its overall length. If you don't include it, then they're pretty dang close. In terms of width, they're just about the same. And in terms of thickness, the Boss pedal is a bit thicker, but not by much. So traditional compact size pedals. You're probably really interested to hear what it sounds like, so I included some samples up front, and we'll get into more sound samples, but I want to just talk through the controls really briefly. True bypass foot switch, of course. Volume does what it says. There's quite a bit of volume on tap, so you can really use this thing to push your amp really hard, and I find it to have a really pleasing distortion within this pedal as well. So the bass and the treble knobs are really where things get interesting, in my opinion. The gain knob is useful, but I'll come back to that. The bass knob is located. The bass control is located at the front of the circuit before a lot of the clipping happens. And so when you roll it back, it doesn't necessarily cut a lot of the bass from the sound of the pedal. It's not as dramatic in terms of affecting like the tonality of the frequency spectrum of the sound coming out of the pedal, but it does affect how much drive there is. So as you roll it back, it's going to tighten up the drive, and it's going to reduce how much drive there is. And as you push it forward, it's going to make the drive more saggy, more farty, more bottom heavy, and there's gonna be a lot more drive. So it's kind of like the bass control on like a Fender Princeton, right? So when you crank up a Fender Princeton, as you turn that bass control up, it's gonna get farty. It's going to lose a lot of that power is trying to go to get that bass end out of the amp, but the amp just doesn't have enough power, so it's really struggling. And as you turn that bass knob down, it really tightens things up and helps the sound to come out of the speaker more effectively. So it really works kind of like that, the bass control on a real tube amp as you crank it up. The treble knob is located after a lot of the drive circuitry, so it kind of filters the top end. To me, it sounds like a shelf control, like a high shelf, located somewhere around, probably, I want to say, if I had to guess, 3 kilohertz or something like that is where it starts, and then you can roll off those high frequencies or really boost them. And at noon, it sounds pretty bright and open. As you roll it backwards, it muffles the pedal and makes it sound darker, so this is good for really bright guitars or really bright amps. As you push it forward, it starts to open up the top end a little bit more, but once you get to 3 o'clock and you push it further open, it starts to really sound really nasty and unfiltered, kind of almost like a really angry octave fuzz in a way. So it's a really interesting treble control, is that you can really push it open and it completely transforms the sound of the pedal to become something that's way more aggressive and angry. One thing I like about this pedal is that it doesn't have too much compression. Some amp in a box pedals are really compressed. This pedal is a little bit less compressed at the lower ranges of the gain control. I think it responds well to have a compressor in the front of it. But as you get the gain knob kind of around noon and go past noon, it does get compressed and it gets really saturated, and it sounds absolutely wild at the maximum when you max it out. So if you like max out the bass and crank the treble up and crank the drive and have the level, you know, set somewhere, it's gonna sound really, really fun, and it's really a nice, furry, angry sound. But it's not as long as you keep the treble knob back a bit, it's not going to get too much into fuzz territory, and it will gonna retain some of that smooth tubey characteristics that you would expect from a small tube amp. Walrus, I will say one quick note on Walrus Audio. They've been really great. I had an issue with my Walrus Audio ACS1, and I contacted Walrus, and they said, hey, just send the pedal over, we'll send a replacement out. And then, you know, a month later, I was like, hey, do you want this one back? Or, you know, I can get my old one, I could trade back if you want. And they're like, no, we'll just keep testing it because we haven't figured out the air yet. So they were really gracious, really fast too, to do it, and they didn't didn't charge me any money for shipping. They just did it, no questions asked, and that was really kind of cool. So big props to Walrus's customer service. They've been nothing but wonderful to me in dealing with the issue I had with the ACS1. I'll have to cover that in another video. Aesthetically, the pedal's nice. It's got this cool black and yellow color scheme, which I always enjoy. I'm a big lover of black and yellow and orange. I love orange. Let's take a look inside the Walrus Audio 385, shall we? And we can talk about a little bit, just a tiny bit, about the build quality therein. So if we take off the lid of the pedal, we can see there's no room for a 9-volt battery at all. So this pedal must be powered only by the center negative DC barrel jack. There are 3 trim pots. I believe Walrus has said something to the effect of don't touch them or it'll void your warranty. There's a couple of ICs but everything else, aside from the jacks and the connector cable to the foot switch, appear to be surface mounted, which isn't a bad thing. It just speeds up the manufacturing process. So don't listen to the people who say the through hole is better. It might be better. It's easier to repair, so that's a good thing for tube amps, but for pedals, it really doesn't make a big difference. Everything in here is very low voltage, so it's not a problem at all. I'm not gonna mess with the trim pots because I like the sound of it as it is, frankly, so I'm not gonna mess around. Everything appears to, you know, still look good after all these years. There's a bit of kind of weird corrosion stuff happening with this foot switch. I'm not really sure, or oxidation, but I'm not gonna mess around with that, and it still works fine. Everything appears to be, you know, operating just fine. This one was built way back in 2016, so this is a bit of an older one. So it's serial number 864, so it's not super new. Pros and cons of this pedal. Pros, compact size, you know, true bypass if that's your thing. Lots of control, big range of tones out of it, and great sounds. Great for those American style overdrive tones, and it's kind of unique. It's not too compressed, it's not overly sparkly, but it's a nice grindy, furry overdrive tone that's not too aggressive in the top end. I love the bass control being before the drive, and I love the treble control being after. It really just makes it work really well. The gain range is really usable, it's really easy to use, and there's plenty of output volume on tap. I love the look of the pedal. I think it looks fantastic, and I think it looks great on any pedal board. In terms of cons, if I had to give any, I really can't. I think for the price, it's a fantastic pedal. Used, they're not going for too much either, so at least last time I checked, and now I'm gonna have to check again. They're going for $130 on Reverb, or at least that's the cheapest one. And there's one for $114. So yeah, and you can get them new for $200, which is a pretty fair price. And I think that it sounds pretty dang nice. So let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. I've been Zachariah Connor, and you've been wonderful. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.